Now, I wanted to talk about my personal plan that I have put forth on YouTube, in which I'm trying to raise money to go to Minnesota. A few weeks ago, I put up a Ron Paul at the Crossroads, a video in which I said, "Look, I'm going to try to raise money so I can go to Minnesota. I'd like you all to help send money so that I can go to Minnesota, and I'm going to try to get the permits I need to stand right in front of the Republican National Convention at the XL Center, and I'm going to try to preach to delegates as they stream into the convention hall to convince them to abstain from the first round of voting, so that it can be turned into a brokered convention, and so that Ron Paul can be nominated from the convention floor." Now, I want to clear up some confusion because Ron Paul himself has said, that he doesn't have a chance of being nominated from the convention floor, and he has said that he doesn't have enough delegates to win the nomination. He has said all these things, and I want to make something clear. I was a little confused when he ended his campaign a few days ago because I wasn't sure if his delegates that are still going to the convention, if they can still vote for Ron Paul. And then the other question I had was, if somehow McCain does not get enough delegates to vote for him in the first round, and it is thus open to a second round of voting in which some of the delegates are then unbound, free to vote for who they want, and it turns into a brokered convention, can Ron Paul still be nominated from the convention floor? Well, I asked the Ron Paul meetup group here in Portland, which is really, really big. They have a whole website, Oregonians for Ron Paul. A lot of them are very knowledgeable. And I got several answers, and they all said yes to both questions, that the delegates can still vote for Ron Paul, just like Huckabee's delegates and Romney's delegates can still vote for Romney and Huckabee if they want. The Ron Paul delegates can still vote for Ron Paul, even though he suspended his campaign. And furthermore, if it did turn into a brokered convention, which is what my goal is, Ron Paul's name could still be nominated from the floor. So when Ron Paul says he cannot be nominated from the floor because of the elite wouldn't allow that. What he's saying is, he's not saying that it's not possible. What he's saying is it's not likely. And he's right, it's not likely. What is likely to happen is that there's going to be one round of voting, that McCain is going to get more than enough delegates to vote for him in the first round, and he'll become the nominee at that point. That's what's likely to happen. That's what Ron Paul expects, and that's why he's making other plans, which is very practical. Okay, he's making other plans to advance his cause, which is fine. But it's not necessarily so. There is still a chance that if about 20 to 25% of the people that are bound to vote for McCain, if they simply abstain, which just means they don't vote, which is perfectly allowed by the GOP rules, if they don't vote, which does not give McCain enough delegates to secure the nomination, then there is a second round of voting. In that second round, a certain portion, not all, but a certain portion of delegates that are bound to vote for a certain candidate are then free to vote for whomever they choose. From the nomination floor, anyone can be nominated. I mean, he doesn't even have to be somebody who ran for president. You could have Mayor Bloomberg nominated if you wanted, or you could really basically have anyone that you can think of be nominated from the convention floor. Okay, so the idea is that you get past this first round. McCain doesn't get enough delegates. It sends shock waves to the GOP establishment that McCain did not get enough delegates, which is very possible because a lot of the people bound to vote for McCain don't necessarily like McCain, okay, any more than they like Obama or Hillary. So it sends these shock waves, and then you have some Ron Paul delegates that, I don't know exactly how the process works, but they put forth Ron Paul's name. Maybe someone seconds it. I don't know. But anyway, he's nominated from the floor. And I'm sure there'll be others. There might be Huckabee delegates and Romney delegates and others who will put forth their candidate. Say, hey, wait a minute. Since McCain didn't win, maybe we can win. And so then the idea is in the second round, hopefully you can get more delegates to vote for Ron Paul. And then if it has to go to a third round, you get even more until you have enough rounds where Ron Paul has enough delegates to win the presidency or win the nomination. So my goal is still to go to Minnesota in September to try to get as close as I can to the XL Center and preach, lift up my voice, and try to convince the delegates that are streaming into the convention center to abstain from the first round of voting so that Ron Paul can be nominated from the convention floor. Is it likely? No, it's not likely. if I go and I do this, what's very likely to happen is McCain supporters and delegates will see me and shrug their shoulders and go in and do what they want. But is it possible? It is possible. If I don't do it, then the McCain people are definitely going to vote for McCain. If I do it, there is a possibility that something I say might stick in their minds, and they simply say, well, maybe I will abstain because I just want to see what happens. I'm not voting against McCain. I'm just going to abstain because I hear what this guy is saying. I've seen all these Ron Paul signs. I see all these Ron Paul blimps in the air. So maybe I want to see who this Ron Paul guy is, and maybe I should consider him. So I'm not going to vote against McCain, but I'll abstain just to see what happens. If I can get even 20 to 25% of those delegates to do that, then we have a brokered convention. So that is still possible. So I wanted to make that clear because I know there was a lot of mass confusion that went around everywhere. People saying, well, if Ron Paul's dropped out of the race, how can his delegates vote? And Ron Paul himself has even said in his speech where he effectively ended the campaign, he encouraged his delegates to go to the convention, to be a part of the convention. Well, he wouldn't do that if the delegates couldn't vote for Ron Paul, okay? So Ron Paul himself knows the delegates can still vote for Ron Paul. They can still affect the platform. They can still do things. So Ron Paul does want a presence to be there at the National Republican Convention. So I just wanted to make that clear for anyone who has contacted me and said that they wanted to support me, or anyone who might have seen my videos and was thinking about supporting me. Please send your money to me, support me, so that I can go to Minnesota and do this. I'm a public speaker. I have no fear of speaking in front of crowds. I do this all the time on college campuses. I speak in front of people a lot. I've dealt with the police. I know how to deal with them. I know how to get permits. I know how to work the system so that I can get where I need to get to reach these people. So if don't let all this confuse you, okay? It's still possible to get Ron Paul to be nominated the President of the United States. It could still happen. And the way it would play out is, I'd go there, I'd preach, I'd try to convince and talk to as many delegates as possible that are set to bound for McCain to abstain. Then what would happen is the first round comes and goes, and McCain doesn't get enough delegates. It's all of a sudden open to a brokered convention. There's a great deal of excitement and fervor. And then across the river, Ron Paul and his people hear the news. It's blasted across the news media. And all of a sudden, Ron Paul might use his bully pulpit from where he's speaking and say, hey, look, there's a brokered convention now, and he could just start speaking. And I'm sure it would be televised. And you would really have an amazing thing. And then you'd have the next round of voting. And if you got enough rounds where Ron Paul was nominated, then Ron Paul could literally go from his rally, travel across the river in a huge convoy, parade, whatever, and walk into the convention to give his acceptance speech as the nominee. I mean, wouldn't that be cool? It could happen. I mean, we're talking about a world in which we had, the election of 2000, okay, and all the drama, September 11, 2001, okay, Hurricane Katrina. I mean, we're talking about a world in which a lot of crazy things have been happening these last 8 years. So really, the events I just described would sort of fit in with the world we're living in. I mean, it would be crazy in a good way. Well, a bad way for the Democrats and a bad way for the neocons, but it'd be good for us, it'd be good for the people. And of course, then Ron Paul would have a field day for the next month, 2 months, totally squashing Obama in the debates. So, anyway, I encourage you to please send me the money. I need about $1,200 to $1,300 to make this happen. And I am not affiliated with the Ron Paul campaign in any way. So you wouldn't make your checks out to Ron Paul or to his campaign. You'd make it out to me, Daniel Lee. I can give you my address. So I'm not affiliated, but I am willing to give you receipts and copies of receipts of how I spend your money so that you can keep me accountable and you can know that your money is going toward having me go to Minneapolis and it's not being spent on cheeseburgers and going on a vacation or something. So I am willing to send you receipts. I'm going to plan to have either an audio or video recording of my preaching in front of the Excel Center. So you'll have plenty of verification that your money is being used for a good purpose. So anyway, I just wanted to clear up that confusion, and thank you for giving me this time.